بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today or tonight بإذن ta'ala we will move forward after we have successfully walhamdulillah we have successfully introduced, studied, and discussed in brief the 7 most prolific narrators of hadith from the companions and the 6 imams of the mother books of hadith, al-mukthirun al-sab'a and a'immat ashab al-kutub al-sitta. Walillahi alhamdulillah minna. That is a good pace, it's an accomplishment for all of us. Now, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we will move forward by the permission of Allah, the Mighty and the Most High. We will discuss a new Imam tonight, and this Imam tonight and the following Imams, by Allah's permission, will not be a part of a specific, defined class. المكثرون السبعة واحد إلى سبعة أصحاب كتب الستة محدد. As far as these imams بإذن ta'ala, then of course لهم طبقات. Of course, طبعا هم في طبقات. ولكن it will be a little different. Inshallah ta'ala, it will be a little different. So before we move forward with the imam that I have tonight, whose name I will not mention yet, we have with us Sunan al-Nasa'i, like we brought Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, and Sunan Ibn Majah. An-Nasa'i and Ibn Majah, I believe the last 2 books that we did not read, actually reading from the books. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. All right. Man lil qira al-yawm. Who's going to read for us? Bismillah. Jazakallahu khairan. You want me to pick or you just open it up? Okay. Bismillah. Tfaddal. Jazakallahu khairan. Barakallahu feek. Everybody listen carefully, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم كتاب الآذان والسنة فيها
كتاب الأذان والسنة فيها.
حدثنا أبو عبيد محمد بن عبيد بن ميمون المدني ثنا محمد بن سلمة الحراني ثنا
حدثنا هو اختصار.
حدثنا محمد بن إسحاق حدثنا محمد بن إبراهيم التيمي عن محمد بن عبد الله بن زيد عن أبيه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد هم بالبوق وأمر بالناقوس فنحت فأري عبد الله بن زيد في المنام قال رأيت رجلا عليه ثوبان أخضران يحمل ناقوسا فقلت له يا عبد الله تبيع الناقوس قال وما تصنع به قلت أنادي به إلى الصلاة قال أفلا أدلك على خير من ذلك قلت وما هو قال تقول الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله قال فخرج عبد الله بن زيد حتى أتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبره بما رأى قال يا رسول الله رأيت رجلا عليه ثوبان أخضران يحمل ناقوسا فقلت عليه الخبر فقص عليه الخبر فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن صاحبكم قد رأى رؤيا فاخرج مع بلال إلى المسجد فألقها عليه فألقها عليه ولينادي بلال فإنه أندى صوتا منك قال فخرجت مع بلال إلى المسجد فجعلت ألقيها عليه وهو ينادي بها. قال فسمع عمر بن الخطاب الصوت فخرج فقال يا رسول الله والله لقد رأيت مثل الذي رأى. قال أبو عبيد أخبرني أبو بكر الحكمي أن عبد الله بن زيد الأنصاري قال في ذلك أحمد الله ذي الجلال وذي الإكرام حمدا على الآذان كثيرا إذ أتاني به البشير من الله فأكرم به لدي بشيرا في ليال وإلى بهن ثلاث كلما جاء زادني توقيرا.
Jazakallah khairan. Really quickly, can I search on this? That's okay? Okay, do we have Arabic? Can I switch the language? Is there Arabic on this laptop? No? Okay, let's see if we can do it in English. I had a better idea. Instead of just reading it, I should have, obviously, qadr of Allah, and placed it upon the screen. And obviously they have different sites, but I want this specific PDF. Alhamdulillah, at the end of the day. All right, really quick, or quickly. Kitab al-Muqaddimah. Whatever that's supposed to be, Kitab al-Muqaddimah. Kitab al-Adan bil-Qasr. لأن كذا قلت آذان جمع أذن. طيب, جزاكم الله خيرا. Okay, so this is the first hadith that we read. And there's a random hadith that we read. Our reader, Jazakallah khairan, he read from a book which is called Kitabul Adani was Sunnati Fiha, the book of the Adan and the Sunnah regarding it. And then we have Bab Bad'il Adan, how the Adan began. And perhaps we'll read this in English, a tremendous hadith, which I'm sure you are familiar with, how the Adan started. And obviously this isn't the topic of our discussion tonight, but it's important to understand the seerah is that the 5 mandatory prayers were sent down where? Where was the legislation of the 5 mandatory prayers? Where? In paradise, would you say? In heavens. Isra Mi'raj. Anybody else? ما أحد تنبه للسؤال. أنا قلت أين نزلت فريضة الصلوات الخمس؟ السؤال من أصله إيش؟ خاطئ. السؤال من أصله إيش؟ ما نزل أصلا. أنت انتبهت ولا لا؟ وإنما عرج به فشرعت هناك ولم ينزل إيش؟ شيء. The 5 daily prayers were never sent down. They were legislated, as was mentioned, during the night of the Isra and Mi'raj. A trick question. Hajj was sent down. Naam? Everybody clear on this? Ramadan was what? Sent down. The legislation. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. Right? Hijrah. But the 5 daily prayers were legislated when the Messenger of Allah ascended to heavens. All right, so we're done with the trick question. When was this? When were the 5 daily prayers legislated? At what point of the seerah? What year? Kam? Huh? After the Hijrah, he says. توافق؟ أبدا. الإسراء والمعراج إيش؟ بلا شك. That was before Hijrah, right? Isra and Miraj was before they left Mecca. Amul Huzn, the year of sadness. What year was this? Min al-Mawlid, min al-Bi'fa, min al-Hijrah. Min al-Bi'fa, there are 3 different timelines. From the Prophet being born until he became a prophet. From him being a prophet until he made Hijrah. 3 different scales. Year 1 to year 40, for example. From birth until 20, 25, he traveled to Syria, he married Khadija, etc., etc., etc. And then from when the Prophet was mab'uth, iqra, ya ayyuhal muddathir, ya ayyuhal muzammil, him becoming a prophet and a messenger until he left Mecca. And then from the time in which he arrived in Medina until the end of his life, alayhi salatu wasalam. Everybody clear on this? Are you guys with me or not? So therefore, Isra Mi'raj for sure was before Hijrah. And obviously, Isra wal Mi'raj was after he was a prophet and a messenger. So what timeline are we using out of the three? Which one? Just give me the number. The second, thank you. The second timeline. Not from birth until pre-prophethood, nor prophethood to Hijrah, but prophethood before Hijrah. So the second scale. So what year, how many years did he remain a prophet before going to Mecca? 13. So that is where we're investigating which out of these 13 years was Isra and Mi'raj. What year? He said the year of sadness. Does that make it easy for us or sadder, more difficult? When is the Am al-Huzn? What year? What number? He says 8. Abu Hatim says 8. You agree? 8. So that, what do you say?
There were no years at that time.
He says there were no years that time. It's even more difficult now. All right, let's make things easy. How long did the Muslims make the 5 daily prayers in Mecca? He says 3 years. So if they made the 5 daily prayers, انتبهوا الصلوات الخمس المفروضة ولم نقل صلاة صلاة موجودة كائنة معروفة لكن الصلوات الخمس في أوقاتها وهيئاتها سؤال محدد. When did the Muslims make 5 daily prayers in Mecca? For how long? He says 3 years. So that would mean the Isra and Mi'raj had to happen in the what year? 10th, based off of what you're saying. And they remained in Mecca for 3 years, making the 5 daily prayers. And then when they made Hijrah, they left Mecca, they went to Medina, they continued to do what? Make those 5 daily prayers. The how, the rulings, the wudu, the ghusl, the this, the that, all of that came when? Everybody clear on this? And from that is what? The Adan. When they got to Medina, were they making prayers or not? They were. Whether we get the year or not, because we still haven't given the answer. But for sure, when they got to Medina, the very first day of Hijrah, the Muslims were making what? 5. Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, Fajr. For sure. But how did they pray? Was there Adan? Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Was there a fire? Was there a drum? Was there a horn? How did they know when it was time to pray, and how did they congregate? كيف تجمعوا للصلاة؟ هل شرع الأذان أول الهجرة? That's what this hadith in this chapter is speaking on, how the Adan was legislated. And it states here, the Messenger of Allah, we can hit the lights really briefly, please. Really briefly, this isn't our class, huh? Abdurrahim, this isn't our class. This is just an exercise. This isn't a biography. We take all the lights off, inshallah. We don't need them. We don't need those. All right, Jazakumullah khairan. So, everyone please listen carefully. Who's our reader? Mahd, go ahead. It was narrated. Abdullah ibn Zayd is this companion's name.
The Messenger of Allah was thinking of a horn, and he commanded that a bell be made, and it was done. Then Abdullah ibn Zayd
The Messenger of Allah was thinking of a horn, meaning to call to the prayer. Blowing a horn, make an announcement, hey guys, it's time for dhuhr. Come and congregate, and let's pray right now. And he commanded that a bell be made instead of a horn, ringing a bell. And then all of a sudden, this Sahabi, Abdullah bin Zayd, he said,
Then Abdullah ibn Zayd agreed. He said, I saw a man
He wearing 2 green garments. Is green a special color in Islam? Is there virtue behind green? This carpet isn't green. Many masjids you go to, the carpet is green. Right? The dome upon the Prophet ﷺ's tomb is green. I'm of this country, from this group, I wear a green turban. Is green a special color? Does green have a merit? What's important is, alayhi thawbani akhdarani. He was wearing 2 green garments in the dream. What did he see in his dream?
I saw a man wearing 2 green garments carrying a bell. I said to him, O slave of Allah, will you sell the bell?
Ya Abdullahi, atabi'u naqus? Are you selling it? He said,
What will you do with it? I said, I will call the people to prayer. He said, shall I not tell you of something better?
let me give you something better than a horn or a bell or a fire. Let me give you a better idea for bringing the Muslims to prayer.
I said, what is it? He said, say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah.
To the point in which he says, the Adan, Abdullah bin Zayd went out.
Abdullah bin Zayd went out and came to the Messenger of Allah and told him what he had seen. He said, O Messenger of Allah, I saw a man wearing 2 green garments carrying a bell. And he told him the story. The Messenger of Allah said, his companion has had a dream. Go out with Bilal to the mosque and teach it to him, for he has a louder voice than you.
Abdullah bin Zayd saw the dream, but he wasn't the first mu'adhin. Rather, the job was given to Bilal, radiallahu anhu, فَإِنَّهُ أَنْدَى صَوْتًا مِنْكَ. His voice is louder, is deeper, it's better. He's more suited for the adhan than you are. In another narration it says, فَإِنَّهَا رُؤْيَا حَقٍّ Inshallah. It's a true dream that you have seen, a true vision. Allah has given you a true dream. Tayyib? Umar ibn Khattab heard the voice and came out saying,
O Messenger of Allah, by Allah, I saw the same dream as him. Hassan Abu Dawood, Abi Ubayd said, Abu Bakr al-Hakami told me that Abdullah bin Zayd.
to the end of the narration. Umar saw the same thing, but Abdullah bin Zayd beat him to the punch. And this should show us فَاسْتَبِقُوا خَيْرَاتٍ. Never hesitate. You feel a good feeling? Bismillah. Do not hesitate to do good. Evil, I'm unsure, then you hesitate. Think about it. Think about it well. But giving sadaqah, someone asks you for money, Bismillah. Don't think, oh, can I afford it? Is it? Bismillah. Fadal. Never hesitate for good. So Abdullah bin Zayd, he got the virtue because he went to the Prophet first. And Umar saw the same dream. All right, so this is just one example of Sunan ibn Majah, just one example. His book is Murattab al-Kutub and is Mubawwab. And the fiqh is in the kitab and the bab. And the alaqa wal-munasaba بين الحديث وبين الباب لابد أن تكون. ما المناسبة بين بدء الأذان وهذا الحديث الذي ساقه الحافظ ابن ماجه رحمه الله تعالى. All right, طيب, جزاكم الله خيرا. Let's read one more hadith, please, inshallah. من أي مكان.
باب ما جاء في صلاة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خلف رجل من أمته. حدثنا محمد بن المثنى حدثنا ابن أبي عدي.
طيب, معلش, F1. Let's move forward. من أجل الوقت. جزاكم الله خيرا. Okay, who's our next volunteer for An-Nasa'i? Who's our next volunteer, inshallah? Anybody? So he got scared. It's easy. Bismillah. Jazakum Allah khairan. The book is not going to bite you, I promise. Shukran. Okay. Bismillah. باب إحلال المطلقة 3 والنكاح الذي يحلها به.
باب إحلال المطلقة 3 والنكاح الذي يحلها به. حدثنا إسحاق بن إبراهيم قال أنبأنا السفيان عن الزهري عن عروة عن عائشة قالت جاءت امرأة رفاعة إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقالت إن زوجي طلقني فأبت الطلاق
فأبت الطلاق.
فأبت طلاقي وإني تزوجت بعده عبد الرحمن بن الزبير وما معه إلا مثل هدبة الثوب فضحك رسول الله
عليه الصلاة والسلام
وقال لعلك تريدين أن ترجعي إلى رفاعة لا حتى يذوق عيلتك
عسيلتك
لا حتى يذوق عسيلتك وتذوقي عسيلته. أخبرنا محمد بن المثنى قال حدثنا يحيى قال حدثني عبيد الله قال حدثني القاسم عن عائشة أن رجلا طلق امرأته 3 فتزوجت زوجا فطلقها قبل أن يمسها فسئل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أتحل للأول فقال لا حتى يذوق عسيلتها كما ذاق الأول.
جزاك الله خيرا. Shukran. The barakah of the book is going to be unmatched. The barakah of the book is unmatched. No matter what electronic, virtual, scanned, nothing is like the what? The actual book. And that's why I brought the books. Of course, we have the electronics, we have the scanned stuff, etc., your phones. But I want to show you guys and allow you to have what? Hands-on. Everybody clear on this? Inshallah ta'ala. ونلاحظ كما قرأنا إن السؤال أو التفقه في الدين عادي. عادي. Right? It's better to be embarrassed or to ask a question which somebody may feel uncomfortable instead of being ignorant and doing something that's incorrect with regards to the hadith that we read. طيب, I need one more reader from the crowd. تحريم جمع المرأة وخالتها. أخبرنا عبيد الله بن سعيد قال حدثني يحيى قال حدثنا هشام قال حدثنا محمد عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا تنكح المرأة على عمتها ولا على خالتها. أخبرنا إسحاق بن إبراهيم قال أنبأنا المعتمر عن داود بن أبي هند عن الشعبي عن أبي هريرة قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن تنكح المرأة على عمتها والعمة على بنت أخيها. أخبرنا محمد بن عبد الأعلى قال حدثنا خالد قال حدثنا شعبة قال أخبرني عاصم قال قرأت على الشعبي كتابا فيه عن جابر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا تنكح المرأة على عمتها ولا على خالتها. قال سمعت هذا من جابر. أخبرني محمد بن آدم عن ابن المبارك عن عاصم عن الشعبي أنه قال سمعت جابر بن عبد الله يقول نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن تنكح المرأة على عمتها وخالتها. أخبرني إبراهيم بن الحسن قال حدثنا حجاج عن ابن جريج عن أبي الزبير عن جابر قال نهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن تنكح المرأة على عمتها أو على خالتها. So in this selection, same book but a different print, we see Kitabun Nikah, the book of marriage. The Imams of the 6 canonical books, they are all organized and arranged according to the books, not alphabetically, nor the names of their teachers. وَإِنَّمَا مُرَتَّبْ وَمُبَوَّبْ عَلَى أَبْوَابِ الْفِقْهِ. Iman, ilm, tahara, salah, janais, etc., etc., etc. So it makes it easier for you to read and to research. And pay attention now, guys. This was over 1,000 years ago. There was no Dewey Decimal System. There was no printing press. There was no Cambridge and Oxford, so on and so forth. The Muslims, for sure, were mentally and intellectually advanced, light years upon the other nations. Light years, specifically the people of Hadith. Over 1,000 years ago, 1,200 years ago, 1,300 years ago, they had memorized, recorded, organized, arranged thousands and thousands and thousands of names and chains and this and that. Data. Way before there was a thing called data. So if we, the Muslims, if we were to only just take a small glimpse into this history, our lives would be better today with regards to feeling inferior and with regards to feeling indebted to the modern Western society and its technological accomplishments. Everyone understand this? If we just look at this one book, we see this, how amazing it is, how detailed, fine-tooth comb over how 1,000 years is a long time ago. You read about 200 years ago, American history, Revolutionary War, Civil War, that's history, it's old, right? Imagine 1,000 years ago, right? So in Nasa'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, Kitabun Nikah, and then he has a chapter, and this chapter says, this is a random place, Tahrim al-Jam'i bayna al-mar'ati wa khalatiha, the impermissibility of being married to a woman and her aunt at the same time. Meaning, speaking on the rulings of polygyny or polygamy. You're allowed to marry this woman. You cannot be married to her and her aunt. As far as if you were divorced, you separated, or she died, and then later on you wanted to marry her aunt, that's lawful. But they cannot be co-wives. Everybody clear on this? And then in Nasa'i, rahimahullah, just like Ibn Majah, he gives the chain of narration, his teacher, أخبرنا عبيد الله ibn Sa'id. That's the name of Nasa'i's teacher, Abdullah ibn Sa'id, or Ubaydullah ibn Sa'id, excuse me. And this hadith goes back to Abu Hurairah, who said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, لا تنكح المرأة على عمتها ولا على خالتها. A woman cannot be married along with her maternal or paternal aunt. All right? And then he mentioned several hadiths, mukarrara, repeated hadiths, بأسانيد مختلفة, متابعات, اختلاف الرواة في الألفاظ وألفاظ الأداء, اختلاف المتون. He mentions the different versions of this hadith over and over again. And the next chapter says, باب ما يحرم من الرضاع. What woman becomes unlawful for you to marry, or man becomes unlawful for a woman to marry because of suckling, being a foster brother or foster sister from breast milk. The breast milk is obviously caused by the man. You cannot marry this person because when you were younger, you and her shared the same breast milk. This woman was a nurse to you when you were a baby and to her. You guys are grown. You aren't related. She's not your sister. She's not your aunt. You cannot marry her. Al-Muhim, we're not here to discuss the fiqh in detail. We're not here to talk about this ruling in detail. But I'm getting to show you is that reading these books of hadith sharpens your mind. And you learn fiqh and the rulings just from what? Just from reading. Everybody clear on this? Just from reading the chapters in the books. Khayr, inshallah. Jazakumullah khayran. Let's move forward tonight with our guy. Who can take a guess who we're going to talk about tonight? Malik. طبعا مغاري بس Malik. Who? Malik, of course. People want Malik. Who else? Who are we talking about tonight? From the Imams of Hadith, after the six. And once again, just because we spoke on the six authors doesn't mean that this person was after them. Rather, he was before them. But we put the six in a place for a reason. Right. Anybody got a guess? Alhamdulillah, the guess is correct. Malik. All right. Who's our reader? And before we read this, the name of the book that we're reading from tonight is an extremely special book. A book that every single student of knowledge is supposed to have in his library and read from, which is called Siyaru A'lam An-Nubala. Tasnif al-Imam Shamsuddin Muhammad ibn Ahmad ibn Uthman al-Dhahabi al-Mutawaffa sanat 748 lil-Hijra. Dhahabi, one of the greatest Imams of Hadith of his era, he has a book which is called Siyaru A'lam An-Nubala, and which he talks about the different levels of the greatest scholars of Islam, the tabaqat, the levels and the generations and the biographies of the great Imams of this deen. This is volume 8, Al-Juz' al-Thamin, and on page 48, he speaks on Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. And of course, Malik is a household name. He's an icon. Everybody's heard of Malik. Everybody knows Malik. But in most cases, what is Malik most famous for? You say Muwatta. I disagree. Strongly. What is Imam Malik most famous for? لا شك في ذلك. الفقه. وأتباع المذهب. Alright? In most cases, Malik is most known for being one of the four Imams. Being a founder of a school of thought. And having thousands, if not millions, of disciples and learners of his school in Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Libya, Senegal, Mali, and other parts of the world, Sub-Saharan, Saharan Africa, so on and so forth. People who follow this madhab of Imam Malik, rahimahullah. But to the people of Hadith, of course, he's most known for Muwatta. But the people of Hadith are the minority, right? فَتُوبَ إِلَى الْغُرَبَى. Naam? Okay, who's our reader tonight? Bismillah. Bismillah. لا أنت صاحبنا. Bismillah. Bismillah.
مالك الإمام.
Malik al-Imam. That's what he called him. Malik al-Imam. And there we see a little letter here, which is عين. هذا رمز إنك تجد حديثه في إيش؟ أصحاب الكتب الستة يعني الجماعة. روى له الجماعة. طيب بسم الله. هو
شيخ الإسلام حجة الأمة إمام دار الهجرة أبو عبد الله مالك ابن أنس بن مالك بن أبي عامر بن عمرو بن الحارث بن غيمان بن حسين بن عمرو بن الحارث وفدو
أصبح
بن عوف بن مالك بن زيد بن شداد
عفوا بسم الله
وهو
حمير الأصغر
الحميري ثم الأصبحي المدني حليف بني تيم من قريش هم خلفاء عثمان أخي طلحة بن عبيد الله أحد العشرة.
أحد العشرة. طيب جزاكم الله خيرا. So first and foremost, Malik. He gives him his respect, the titles that he deserves. He is Shaykh al-Islam. And obviously that's a title that only a few scholars have among thousands of scholars. And perhaps that's one of the highest titles, Shaykh al-Islam. Like Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith. He is the Shaykh of Islam. Hujjatul Ummah. Imam Dar al-Hijrah, the Imam of Medina, Abu Abdullah. His kunya? Malik, the son of Anas, the son of Malik, the son of Abu Amir, to the end of his genealogy, And then the author of HDVIP, he discusses some deeper details of Malik's genealogy, his family tree, his ancestry, where he comes from, what tribe or clan he's associated with. And it goes back to an ancient Arabian tribe, Banu Himyar. And where are the Himyaris? Anybody know? Abu Hatim, Sahib Tarikh. Aina Banu Himyar? Al-Yemen. MashaAllah. Good. Perfect. Then he is Al-Asbahi. Right? What is that lineage? Asbah. Is that a clan? Is that a tribe? Is that a city? Al-Madani. Living in Medina, dying in Medina, residing in Medina. Halif Bani Taym min Quraysh. How his lineage further down the line meets up its joint with Quraysh. One of his great grandfathers was an ally of Quraysh. And then Hasalat al-Nisbah. All right? And then he says that he is related deeper down the line to Talha ibn Ubaidillah, one of the 10 companions promised Jannah. All right. Faddal. وأمه
هي عالية بنت شريك الأزدية وأعمامه.
طيب, his mother's name was Aliyah. Aliyah. That was his mother's name, the daughter of Sharik. Her lineage, her tribe, her clan is different. قال وقد روى الزهري
عن والده أنس وعميه أويس وأبي سهيل وقال مولى التيميين وروى أبو أويس عبد الله
He
عن
discusses more of his lineage. Az-Zuhri, who is Az-Zuhri? We should know who Az-Zuhri is. He narrated from his father, Anas, and his two uncles, Uwais and Abu Suhail. طيب, and he talks about how وكان أبوه من كبار علماء التابعين وأخذ عن عثمان وطائفة. He came from a family of knowledge. His father, his grandfather, he was from good stock. مولد مالك
مولد مالك على الأصح في سنة 93 عام موت أنس خادم رسول الله صلى الله عليه
عليه الصلاة والسلام.
وسلم ونشأ في صون ورفاهية وتجمل.
طيب, Malik, the scholars differ on exactly when he was born. When exactly was he born? HDVIP says the most correct view is that he was born in the year 93. 93 and 100, right? No. 93. He was born before the completion of 100 years. So he's old, much older than Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Nasa'i. Everybody clear on this? He was born 93, not 193. Everybody clear on this? 93. And this was the year, he says, in which a great man, the servant of the Prophet, the companion of the Prophet, Anas, died. And this is similar to Imam Muslim. He was born in the year that Shafi'i died. The sunnah of Allah. Allah takes something and he does what? You guys with me or not? You guys with me? Allah takes a thing and he does what? He replaces. This great alim died, another one was born. Everybody understand this? Allah never takes a thing from someone except that he gives him something else. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right. He was وَنَشْأَ فِي صَوْنٍ. He was born in a very practicing household, a religious household, a spiritual household, a strict household. He was protected from nonsense and evil and haram, disliked things. Sawnin, right? He was clean. His family was clean and they kept him clean from early. وَرَفَاهِيَةٍ. And he was born into royalty. He wasn't poor. He wasn't born needing things. وَتَجَمُّلٍ. Right? He had many comforts. وَطَلَبَ الْعِلْمَ.
وطلب العلم وهو
حدث.
حدث بعيد موت القاسم وسالم فأخذ عن نافع وسعيد
المقبري.
المقبري وعامر بن عبد الله بن الزبير وابن المنكدر والزهري وعبد الله بن دينار وخلق نذكرهم عن المعجم.
طيب, he started seeking knowledge when he was very young. He began his career with hadith. He was very young boy. He wasn't old at all. And these are some of the scholars that he had learned from. Nafi', Sa'id al-Maqburi, Zuhri, etc. Then he mentions many more of his teachers here. How many of his shuyukh in Muwatta. Let's move forward. All right. Countless different scholars. Those whom he learned from, those whom he heard from. قال وفي الموطأ.
وفي الموطأ عدة مراسيل أيضا عن الزهري.
كما قلنا, why Muwatta Malik isn't in the 6 books of Hadith. We explained that. طيب, more of his teachers, his students, which we're summarizing. الآن نختصر. وآخر أصحابه موتا. Those who narrated the Muwatta from him. He then says, قال معن والواقدي ومحمد بن الضحاك حملت مالك بمالك 3 سنين. وعن الواقدي قال حملت به 2. ايش معنى هذا الكلام؟ هذه خرافة ولا كيف? All right, let's translate this. What does it say? They say that Malik, his mother, bore him for 3 years. She was pregnant with him for what? 3 years. Another scholar say 2 years. How can this be? Is this made up? Is it a fairy tale? What happens when a woman goes in her 10th month, her 11th month? What happens? What does the doctors do? They induce the labor. The baby what? Has to come out. There's no more fluid. The baby has the fear of this or that. We have to, no matter what. Whether the woman is ready to give birth or not. A C-section, but the baby has to what? Has to come out, right? Can we agree on this? Malik, he was in his mother's womb for 2 to 3 years. This is a well-known story. These aren't liars. These aren't, the media outlet today, BBC. No, this is trustworthy Muslims. It's well known that his mother had him for 3 years. Why did Allah Azza wa Jalla choose to keep him in his mother's womb for 3 years? Only Allah knows. Right? A very interesting fact. قال وطلب مالك العلم وهو بضع عشرة سنة وتأهل للفتيا وجلس للإفادة وله 21 سنة وحدث عنه جماعة وهو حي شاب طري وقصده طلبة العلم من الآفاق في آخر دولة أبي جعفر المنصور وما بعد ذلك وازدحموا عليه في خلافة الرشيد وإلى أن مات. Malik started seeking knowledge and he was about 11 years old. And shortly afterwards, ta'ahala, he was qualified to give fatwas. Just like that. That's 3 years in the oven baking. He was marinating for 3 years. Right? It's not a normal child anymore. He was fully seasoned in his mother's womb. Right? So he started seeking knowledge at a very young age. And then shortly afterwards, he became a mufti. وَجَلَسَ لِلْإِفَادَةِ, and he began to give benefit. And he was only 21 years old. Many great scholars learned from him, and he was tari, he was fresh, wet behind the ears. He was still young, not a lot of hair on his face, right? He was a young man, okay? طيب. He then goes on to say, speaking on, this is a famous narration here, لَيَضْرِبَنَّ النَّاسُ أَكْبَادَ الْإِبِلِ فِي طَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ فَلَا يَجِدُونَ عَالِمًا أَعْلَمَ مِنْ عَالِمِ الْمَدِينَةِ. Some of the different prophecies concerning Malik and Medina, and people traveling to Medina and learning from Medina and getting on the backs of camels and the humps of camels. And the people won't find a scholar except for in Medina. وَفِي لَفْظٍ أَفْقَهُ مِنْ عَالِمِ الْمَدِينَةِ. طيب. Then HadithDisciple, he goes on to mention these different narrations. ويروى عن ابن عيينة أنه قال كنت أقوله سعيد بن المسيب حتى قلت كان في زمانه سليمان بن يسار وسالم بن عبد الله وغيرهما ثم أصبحت اليوم أقول إنه مالك ولم يبق له نظير بالمدينة. The scholars of Islam, and this is for أصحاب المذاهب, لم يتفقوا على أن الإمام مالك رحمه الله هو المقصود بذاك الحديث. هذا فيه اختلاف. اختلفوا هل المقصود فلان ولا منهم من قال إنه مالك، ولكن ليس هذا محل إجماع على أن مذهبه أصح المذاهب وأضف المذاهب بسبب هذا. لا، هذا من التعصب. Alright? There's no agreement that everyone said that was Malik. But for sure, people would travel going to Medina looking for this great scholar. And some of them said there were people, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, and others from the Salaf al-Salih. All right, moving forward. He goes on to mention some of the virtues of Malik. قلت كان عالم المدينة في زمانه بعد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وصاحبيه زيد بن ثابت وعائشة ثم ابن عمر ثم سعيد بن المسيب ثم الزهري ثم عبيد الله بن عمر ثم مالك. All right. He then says وعن ابن عيينة أنه قال مالك عالم أهل الحجاز وهو حجة زمانه وقال الشافعي وصدق وبر إذا ذكر العلماء فمالك النجم. All right, طيب. He goes on to mention some of the virtues of Malik, some of the different things that he had of ilm, of fiqh, of hadith, some of his virtues, how illustrious he was. And of course, Malik, like other scholars, went through different trials and different tribulations. And like many scholars that we have read, they had to encounter the world of politics and politicians. As a wise man has told us, just because you don't take an interest in politics doesn't mean what? Politics won't take an interest in you. You don't want to deal with the siyasa. You don't want to deal with this leader, this king. That doesn't mean that the sultan or the king or the president won't what? Come for you. Who's this guy that I keep hearing about? Malik. Everybody's traveling to meet this guy. Who's this Malik guy? Summon him. Bring him to the palace. Obviously, the scholars are going to say, Mali wa sultan. Yani, I have nothing to do with him. I don't want or need anything from the ruler. I'm not coming to your palace. Bring him. Force him to come. Right? And we know that Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, as we'll read, inshallah, they were very harsh upon those who went to the leader's palace. من كان يدخل على السلطان لا أنه أخذ منهم جائزة أخذ منهم دخل عليه إذا رأوا محدثا يدخل على السلطان خلاص. We see you going inside the palace, it's over. Everybody understand what I'm trying to say? Because the danger of politics and politicians, and how politicians, illa man rahimallah, except for the people whom Allah is merciful upon, they only care about politics. Lying, stealing, killing, cheating, all of those things, مسائل يعني أن هذه الوسائل تبرر يعني خلاص. These are all legal means. Killing people, torturing people, political goals. No different than today. So if a scholar was seen going to the ruler's palace, many scholars would boycott him. They would leave him alone. Because if he's going into the palace, in most cases, the sultan isn't allowing him to leave empty-handed. He's giving him some gold, some silver, some lands, some titles, some property. And unfortunately, the political leader, he isn't bound by taqwa. He's bound by politics. So tell me the hadith which will establish my reign. Or give me a narration which will give the rule to my sons. Or tell me a hadith about this, and I can kill this one, and I can torture this one. La malish. What do you mean? What do you mean you can't tell me? I'm the ruler. What do you mean you can't get, you understand the problem? It's no different than organized crime. One of the rules of the Sicilian mafia was never, ever to be seen with the police. Not talking to the police, not speaking with the police. You are never to be seen with them. If you're a mafia member and we see you next to a man of the law, class. He's an informant. He's talking. No doubt. Maybe he didn't talk. Maybe we saw him with the police sitting having a cup of coffee. Can't be trusted because it's that slippery. Everyone understand this? You aren't to be seen with that person because your world and their world are supposed to be what? Two different worlds. Alim, Zahid, Taqi, pious, righteous scholar isn't supposed to have anything to do with this palace, silk and marble and this and that. La, because corruption comes. Corruption comes through wealth and through fame. All right, so that's a long story with regards to Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. Some of the statements of Malik, he says, Al-Hasan ibn Abdul Aziz al-Jarawi قال حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف عن خلف بن عمر أنه سمع مالكا يقول ما أجبت في الفتوى حتى سألت من هو أعلم مني هل تراني موضعا لذلك سألت ربيعة وسألت يحيى بن سعيد فأمراني بذلك فقلت فلو نهوك قال كنت أنتهي ولا ينبغي للرجل أن يبذل نفسه حتى يسأل من هو أعلم منه. Asking people who are more knowledgeable than you. Now, not speaking until you ask someone who has greater knowledge than you. This is from the legacy of Imam Malik. Now, and he didn't speak until his teachers allowed him to speak. And of course, where did Imam Malik go? Where did Imam Malik travel? Anybody know? Where did Imam Malik go? We read Bukhari went here, Tirmidhi went there, Muslim went there. Malik didn't travel. And the reason why he didn't travel is because he believed that he had everything that he needed in Medina. And obviously his madhab, Amal Ahl Medina, that's a long discussion, how he would take from the people of Medina and look towards what the people of Medina would look what they would do. طيب. فضل بسم الله اقرأ. وكان مجلسه
وكان مجلسه مجلس وقار وحلم. قال وكان رجلا مهيبا نبيلا ليس في مجلسه شيء من المراء واللغط ولا رفع صوت. وكان الغرباء يسألون عن الحديث فلا يجيب إلا في الحديث بعد الحديث. وربما أذن لبعضهم يقرأ عليه. وكان له كتاب قد انتهى كتبه.
طيب. Malik's majlis, it was peaceful. There weren't people arguing, fighting, raising their voices, but it was serene, calm. It was quiet. There was no laghat, arguing going. There was no disrespectful. Everything was easy. You could mahib. People looked at Malik and they had awe of him. They feared him. They respected him. All right? So that should teach us with regards to some of the etiquettes of a circle of knowledge, a class. It shouldn't just be laughing and joking and so on and so forth. طيب. أحمد بن مسعود المقدسي قال
حدثنا إسحاق بن إبراهيم الحنيني قال كان مالك يقول والله ما دخلت على مالك من هؤلاء الملوك ملك من هؤلاء الملوك حتى أصل إليه إلا نزع الله هيبته من صدري.
الله أكبر. طيب. المهم, we can't translate every single thing. These different quotes of Imam Malik, okay, how pious he was, how righteous he was, and how much of the Sunnah Malik implemented. And obviously that's هذا مأسف أن أكثر من ينتسب إليه وإلى مذهبه يكون أبعد الناس عن اتباع السنة والتمسك بها. Most people today, not all, but most who claim to be Maliki, follow Malik, you find them from the furthest people from the Sunnah, the furthest people from Hadith and the way of the people of Hadith. If you tell them something, you give them something directly from the Hadith, they would say, I'm a Maliki. And these people don't understand that their Imam was hardcore, stringent upon the Sunnah and the Hadith, and he wouldn't go past it. And Imam Malik, he made the famous statement, As-sunnatu kasafinati Nuh, man rakibaha naja, wa man tanakaba anha ghariqa. He says the Sunnah is like Noah's Ark. You ride it, you reach salvation. You stay away from this boat, you will drown. And Imam Malik's famous statement, ما منا إلا عضو مردود إلا صاحب هذا القبر عليه الصلاة والسلام. Every one of us is going to say something which is okay or say something which is going to be rejected. Everybody, except for the one in this grave, pointing to the Prophet ﷺ. Where are the people who say they're Malikis today from that statement? Ma minna. Everybody's statement is accepted or rejected. One way or another. There's no person who's exempt. Everything he says is correct and sound and golden. The fanaticism and the bigotry that has entered upon the people today. Allahul Musta'an. Jazakumullah khairan. All right, before we stop, let's run through an English article here on Wikipedia. Malik ibn Anas. Who's our volunteer? Bismillah. Anybody? Nobody? Nobody wants the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You guys have enough good deeds, huh? MashaAllah. You don't need any extra, huh? طيب, item. Malik ibn Anas, ibn Malik, ibn Abi Amir, ibn al-Harith, ibn Ghayman, ibn Khuthaym, ibn Amr, ibn al-Harith, al-Asbahi. It says al-Humyari, هكذا, the Himyari, al-Madani. He was born 93 of the Hijrah, which is 711 of the Common Era. He died in the year 179, which is equivalent to 795 of the Common Era. So he lived for how many years? 93 to 179. 86? 86? 84? 84? Inshallah. So he had a very long life. Commonly known as Malik bin Anas, was a Sunni Muslim scholar, theologian, jurist, traditionalist, yani muhaddith, and writer. Born in Medina, Malik rose to become the premier scholar of narrations. Look, the first thing he mentioned was what? Narrations before fiqh. Understand? He mentioned his status of hadith before his status as a faqih, as a jurist. Seeking to apply the whole legal life in order to create a systematic method of Islamic jurisprudence, we would only further expand with the passage of time. Referred to as the Imam of Medina by his contemporaries, his views in matters of jurisprudence became highly cherished, both in his own life and afterwards, becoming the founder of the Maliki school, one of the four major schools, one of the four major, meaning there are others, of Islamic jurisprudence. His school became the normative right for Sunni practice in much of North Africa and Andalus, Spain and Portugal, right? Until the expulsion of Spain via those Christians. Why were they kicked out? How were they kicked out? Why did Allah allow them to be kicked out and expelled from Grenada, right? Hamra, from those Christians, those Catholics, Elizabeth, Ferdinand, so on and so forth. How long the Muslims ruled Spain? What is the legacy of Islam upon Spain? And some of the mistakes that were made by the Muslims when they came this close to taking all of Spain, but they made an error. They made a big error. What was that error? Anybody know? Before that, before the infighting, it was something that they didn't do, which they were supposed to have done. Talk about the Reconquista, right? If we pause the tape right now, this is major American history. You cannot truly understand American history unless you know the history of Spain, Portugal, North Africa, and the Mediterranean. One of the founding fathers, supposedly, of America, the discoverer of America was who? Columbus. We have the history teachers among us. Columbus would be nothing if it wasn't for the Muslims in Spain and in the Mediterranean. Columbus was a crusader. He was not an explorer. He was not a merchant. He was a crusader, Salibi. And he only traveled to America, whether he intended to come, whether he got lost. We know that he got lost to hurt and to harm Islam and the Muslims. That was the purpose of his voyage. And the people who funded Columbus were people who had already hurt and harmed Islam and the Muslims and wanted to hurt and harm them even further. Columbus obviously comes from what country? Italian stock. How did he end up dealing with the Spanish?
He was going around to see who would fund his
crazy ideas, his wild fantasies that most of the kings of Europe thought were just, absurd. But there was one woman who was Isabella, not Elizabeth, I said Isabella. She promised Columbus, she was charmed by Columbus. Some of his lies, some of the truth, blah, 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 blah. And she said, no problem. I'll fund your voyages, but I need some more time. And that is, I have to finish washing my hands with the Arabs. Once I'm done kicking them out of Spain, once they've left the continent, you'll have your ships, you'll have your gold, you'll have your silver, and you have your Spanish mandate to go and conquer what you want to go and conquer, right? So Columbus was rejected by most kings of Europe. They thought he was a fool. But Isabella, she had a little bit of, she gambled, she rolled the dice. She took the risk for her reputation, and obviously we know what happened. And this is why Spain became one of the most, if not the most dominant European power of that time, and why South America, Central America, and much of North America speaks Spanish and is Catholic religion. All right, and of course we don't have time to discuss all of this. The Mamluks, the Ottomans, all of the different powers, how they were harmed by not going west, not traveling to the west, right? What's important is you'll be shocked at some of the different things you'll find in the history of this country that were based off of Catholics from Castile and other parts of Spain wanting to eradicate Muslims and Arabs, right? And from that is Columbus, right? And North Africa and Spain, all right? خلاص. No more history lessons, huh? الكلام يطول في هذا. It's a very long discussion, but an important one. That's the moral of the story. It's a very important discussion. طيب, perhaps Malik's most famous accomplishment in the annals of Islamic history is, however, his compilation of the Muwatta, one of the oldest, not the oldest, but one of the oldest and most revered Sunni Hadith collections and one of the earliest surviving Muslim law books, in which Malik attempted to give a survey of law and justice, ritual and practice of the religion according to the consensus of Islam in Medina, according to the Sunnah usual in Medina. There's another reason why Malik's book is not in Kutub al-Sitta, because Malik's book is more geared towards legal fiqh corpus versus canon of hadith in the riwayah. Everybody understand that? طيب, moving forward. Many things they mention in his article, which is a very beneficial article, when he was born. Originally, the Asbahi tribe of Yemen, his great-grandfather Abu Amr relocated the family to Medina after converting to Islam. So his forefathers weren't Muslim, according to this article, right? You can't be a real Muslim unless you're born Muslim. Have you heard this before? You can't be a sincere Muslim unless you're born Muslim. You can't be a scholar unless you're born Muslim, right? That wasn't the mindset of his ancestors. Golden chain of narration, views, theology, the aqidah of Malik. سئل عن الاستواء فقال الاستواء معلوم والكيف مجهول والإيمان به واجب والسؤال عنه بدعة وما أراك إلا رجل سوء فأمر فأخرج من المسجد. They asked him, how is Allah above the throne? Malik said, istiwa is well known in the Arabic language. It's known what it means. وَالْكَيْفُ مَجْهُولٌ. How is Allah above the throne? Something that we don't know as humans, and we can never ever know. Believing in it is mandatory. Asking about how is an innovation, and you're evil. Get out. And he got the man thrown out of the masjid. Right? And there are many other statements of Imam Malik's aqidah and his ittiba'. So those who say they're Malikis, they quote Malik, Maliki madhab, ish aqidatuhum. What aqidah do they have? They have a system of aqidah that Imam Malik, and I'll say this with full confidence, perhaps he would have vomited if he heard what the people say. This is their aqidah and they call themselves Malik. He probably would have spit up. What? This? A'udhu billah. So following these Imams, if you want to follow them 100%. And from the most important things to follow them, وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَائِي مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن بَعْدِي. You following someone upon the aqidah, the correct creed. And Malik, no doubt about it, was upon the creed of the athar, of Ahlul Hadith. He wasn't into this theoretical, philosophical interpretation. He wasn't none of that nonsense. That nonsense didn't exist the way it existed afterwards. Tayyib, ethics, so on and so forth. Knowing the limits of knowledge. He says the shield of an alim is I don't know. If he neglects it, he will receive a mortal blow. Man fatathu Allahu a'lam usiba maqatiluhu. Man fatathu Allahu a'lam usiba maqatiluhu. If the scholar doesn't know how to say I don't know, Allah knows, he'll be killed. You'll say something about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which is incorrect. So this is a very beautiful article here. You guys can read, find more English sources with regards to Malik ibn Anas. And of course, that's the point of me bringing this article to show you what is available in English. Not just Arabic, but also what's English. Tayyib, khairin, inshallah. We'll stop here tonight. Oh man, this is deep. Really quick, just a fa'idah. Bismillah, can we get a reader for this? Really quick. Anybody? Fadl, Mahd. Matamoros. Matamoros. This is a city where? In the northeastern state, Mexican state, right? Close to Texas. Directly across the border from Brownsville, Texas. Matamoros. Matamoros. What does that mean? Matamoros. Anybody know? Anybody have a wild guess? Class is done. This is just a faida. What does Matamoros mean? Anybody know? Yani, keep thinking. Let's see. Let's do a Google search, okay? Let's see what we have, all right? Matamoros meaning. Allahu Akbar. The killer of Moors. How did that city become named that? How did a city on the border between Texas and Mexico, why was it named after the killer of Moors? And who are the Moors? Obviously associated with Islam and associated with North Africa, Africans, Arabs, whatever the case may be. But why in the world is a city in North America called Killer of Moors? And how did it get that name? Columbus, he was a lost merchant, right? He was looking for silk and curry powder and cayenne and cumin and turmeric, right? And he got lost and he landed in Haiti. He landed in the Caribbean, right? That's the lie we're told in school. But we have a city which is called the Killer of Moor Killer. Allahu Akbar. How you name a city after that? Like, what? Do you know any cities like that in the world named after that? Viking Killer, Frank Killer, Jew Killer, Moor Killer. That's the name of the city. How sick is that? But the sicker part about that is, why is it called that? That's the homework assignment for everybody, huh? Inshallah. See what we find. Oh man, gets even deeper, huh? How about that? The coat of arms. It's a little small here. Let's see if we can get a bigger picture. You guys get the point I'm trying to make? About different lies in history, different things that you were not told about the history of this country and how they affect what's going on today in the world. All right, let's get rid of that. Oh, man. Allahu Akbar. Look at that. 4 heads wearing turbans and a Western Christian knight wielding a sword. Matamoros. And there's more to that as well. There's another version of that coat of arms that has those 3 heads dripping blood. I've said what? Focalazim was he at? More than enough. More than enough. All right, tell you, are there any questions tonight on or off the topic? تفضل.
قصة لمالك
أن
أباه تزوج
فدخل
بامرأته ولم تعجبه ففارقها حتى رجع إلى مكة ووجد ابنه يفتي.
الله أكبر. جميل جدا. طيب, any other questions or benefits? We'll stop. تفضل. Perhaps in another class, we'll have no time now, but there are some trials that he went through. Like I said, him meeting up with political people and envy, hasad. These are 2 things that any successful Islamic scholar in most cases is going to encounter. Politicians and hasad, envy, right? Even if you try to avoid it yourself. And this is important for today's lesson or modern times of, if you're scared of getting scratched, then just stay home. Somebody's going to come and cross paths with you, even if you're not a troublemaker and you don't want to get into trouble. But if you excel at anything, success is going to bring hate. That's the moral of the story. Any success is going to bring competition in any aspect of life, deen or dunya, halal or haram, Whatever you're into and you're good at it, you're talented, you're devoted, and you excel, somebody's going to be upset with you. And if you have no haters, no detractors, then you really ain't what? You ain't making no noise. That's the sunnah of life. You ain't making no noise if you ain't got haters. That's reality. So if someone hates you or is talking bad about you or trying to smear you, that should be a good thing. That means that you've left your mark. Huh? Wallahu ta'ala alam. Khairan inshallah. Question is coming from initials AA, Toronto, Canada. Sheikh, were the Muslims in Mexico at that time called Moors? Tahir. Were the Muslims in Mexico at that time called Moors? Were there Muslims in Mexico at that time? Was Mexico conquered by the Spanish and the Portuguese at the time of Columbus? No? So I'm not going to answer the question specifically. That's a long discussion concerning the history of South, Central, and North America and Columbus. Who was the first person from the old world to reach the new world? Was it Columbus? Was it Leif Erikson? Was it the Chinese, the Vikings, Mansa Musa, so on and so forth? There's a long discussion on who came here first from the older world, right? What's important is, in brief, one of the reasons why that city is called that, I'm not going to give you all of the answer because I want you to be a little intrigued to research yourself, is that the people from the old world, they came to the new world with the intention of harming and hurting Islam and the Muslims. But at the same time, and this is a recurring thing in history, oftentimes you become obsessed with your enemy and you don't even realize it. You claim to hate someone so much, you end up falling in love with them. And that is exactly what happened to the Spanish and the Portuguese. Rather, many historians say they themselves were Arabs and Moors, their lineage, but they didn't want to accept it. They rejected it. 700 years, there's going to be some what? No doubt about that. I'm neighbors with you for all of this time. It's nothing but a matter of time before my sister, my daughter, my mother, somehow somebody's going to be with the next person. That's how things are. 700 years of control. So them hating their past, hating those who had conquered them, and then stealing and taking and borrowing the way of the Muslims, and then Christianizing and Catholicizing it in the New World. That's the foundation of America. It's the foundation of America. So when people talk about Muslims being terrorists and extremists and barbaric, etc., 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 they're all ignorant hypocrites who don't know their American history enough, or they do know, but they choose to give you a sanitized version of the history. And that city, Matamoros, is just one what? Small example that what you're told in the news or in the school textbook isn't actually what it is. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Tayyib. Question, Tayyib. Khairan inshallah. We'll stop here tonight. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.